guys have. I would, you guys are the early bird, so you can get started with some questions. Don't everybody talk at once. I was teasing you. I want everybody to talk. And by the way, we have some people on the call that some of you guys raise your hand when you have a question. Like, we can't see everybody on the gallery, so just like interrupt us. Just start talking. We love to hear from you. So please.
I'll start talking if that works.
Yep. Go ahead.
I have found that I between intros and class, I teach 5 or 6 hours straight, and then it takes my staff apparently 5 or 6 hours to get on to watch.com, and then I don't have them for much of anything else. Oh, and then to make it even worse, I had one staff person left, and he stayed home for 2 weeks because he had allergies, and he thought it might be the coronavirus. So that was a nice vacation for him, and awful for me. Is there a much better way, instead of taking 6 hours, to copy 6 hours of me teaching? Because then I don't have them for hardly anything else.
Well, is your question, is there a better way to take 6 hours to copy? What's that?
Of video.
You mean as far as getting your video transferred to your virtual platform?
Right.
If it's taking that long, you're doing something wrong. So that would be something to set up a time with me, and I can show you how to do it much, much faster. It should take
Okay.
Yeah, it should take you about 10, 15 minutes to do it. It shouldn't take very long. So there's something
that couldn't be right.
Yeah, there's something going on there. It's a really useful platform. The other thing we recommend, depending on what your curriculum setup is not posting every single video every day, posting representative classes, because students aren't going to be watching every single video every day. They don't go to class every day. So we post our Tuesday and Saturday classes. So then at the end of morning Wednesday, we post the videos. Morning Sunday, we post the videos, and then they get really everything they need. And it's less stuff for them to look through when they post their videos. But I can show you. It sounds like it's taking you too long to post them. So yeah, schedule a time with me, Carol. I'll be happy to show you how to do that.
I wish I would have gotten on sooner, because it's been that way for 4.5 months.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, we definitely can help you fix that.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's a great platform for everybody to use if you haven't done that with the virtual platform with RevTalks. The students get to see it, and we get a lot of really good feedback because they can post their information and get their stars and stripes and everything right through the online platform. And that helps keep, whatever you're doing, you got to keep student engagement. It's not just about having them, for sure, just not post videos to YouTube or Facebook, having some system so the students can, Google Classroom is one. It's not quite as good because you don't have as much direct interaction. It's not quite set up the same way, but having something so that if they can't make the class, or even if they do make your virtual class, there's a way for them to still submit their worksheets and everything they do, so they still get the stripes that Grandmaster Smith loves to talk about. So all the things that they do in their normal class still happen. So just like we've always talked about, in coronavirus time, it's the exact same thing. We still do marketing, we still do enrollments, we still do renewals, we still do everything. We still teach class excellent. We still do everything the same with some tweak. We have more features. We have virtual. We have more features available, but everything is the same, and therefore you can make the same amount of money. You can have the same number of enrollments. You can have the same results. So, but yeah, Carol, for sure, I'll be happy to help you with that. And thanks for speaking up, Carol. We'd love to hear from you. That's the first time we've heard from you in a while. So, Master Oliver, I was telling everybody, instead of raising their hand at the meeting, if they do have a question, just interrupt us, because we can't always see everybody in gallery mode.
Oh yeah, just jump in.
Yeah, they have to be as good at interrupting us as we are with each other sometimes.
At least as good, yes.
Yeah.
Although they don't have control, so they can't mute us to jump in. That is one of the perks that I enjoy.
Yeah, Bobby, guys, always make me a co-host so I can mute people.
There you go. There you go. Okay, and other questions before we move forward more aggressively here.
Professor Oliver?
Yes.
Three quick questions then. One is, I'm guessing our trip to Indiana, the Air Force thing's canceled this year.
Well, we've been on the wait and see mode on all this stuff, but it certainly looks like that's unlikely, doesn't it?
More likely. Second question is, do you think we might do a back to school meeting like this, one of these sometime sooner? Because this year's advertised a little different than usual. Like we can't do events.
Say that again.
Do you think we might do a Zoom back to school meeting like one of these days? Because like can't go to school, we can't do events this year. So the back to school marketing is a little different this year than it would be normally.
Sure. In fact, we can spend quite a bit of time talking about that today as well.
Okay. And then my third is just because my numbers are dropping, but that's more of a thing I'll talk to Mr. Moody about. So like my website, where I get more stuff, but it's just kind of for me. So yeah.
Yeah, schedule time with me because I know we had some changes and cool things we're going to do on your website. That's pretty exciting.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. The Adam, one of the things is, we just got off our meeting with Jan and Paul and a bunch of other members, and the day before I did the Mile High guys, and most of the people that I've been talking to who have been around a while are having a record July as far as enrollments, and so there certainly is plenty of opportunity, and it's opportunity in part with the Facebook ads are working, Google's coming back strong. A lot of that stuff is working. And part of it is just always having a ton of stuff going on, right? Because what we do see a lot is just, people get fixated on doing one or two things and they don't get the traffic that they should be getting. But, Jan had 19 enrollments for the month. Both the Mile High schools a couple days ago had 13 or 14 enrollments. Westminster was hoping to finish with 20 for the month. So there's no reason in the world that generally that July is not a busy month as far as enrollments. All of everybody's expectations to the opposite. And we've shown that year after year after year. And frankly, without having movies to do, without having big live events to do and everything else, everybody's still getting, or a lot of the schools are still getting really good traffic coming in. And, during the COVID deal, my argument, and it's showing to be true, luckily, is my argument was there's a big pent up demand. So like if you look at the website, SEO, pay-per-click, sure, that was down for a little while because there weren't a lot of parents out searching for a martial arts school under the assumption that it was all closed down. However, we're seeing good results on that in July, good results in June, and Master you said it started picking up again in May, right? So
yeah,
there was a little bit of a hiatus on that. The big live event thing, I'm not sure it's coming back anytime soon. So we've got a ways to go before we're going to be out at the park with a spin wheel or, even the movies. It's, the movie theaters here keep pushing out another month. Last I heard, Mulan is indefinitely postponed, and they're thinking in terms of Wonder Woman as being October, and even when they're open and that's happening, if they're at 25% capacity and people are skittish about a human being walking up to them, that's still going to be a little bit of not one of our prime pillars for a while. Okay. Let's shift over to the other question you had though, Adam, is about back to school marketing, right? Well, for instance, in your area, in the Detroit area, what are they saying right now that they're doing as far as the fall semester?
It's pretty funny. Our governor went on TV on Tuesday, and they asked that question, and she goes, "We don't know yet. The answer will come later than sooner." So as of right now, they have to have a virtual plan, a hybrid plan, and then a back to face thing plan. So right now, like she's opening casinos at 15%, but closing everything to 10 people gatherings now. So they have no clue. I've asked all the parents what the school said. They said either it's going to be a hybrid, it might be all Zoom, or they're trying to get them back. But right now, every district has got their own thing. The governor had tasked that all districts have to come up with their own plan. So there is
When
no,
you when you say all Zoom, do you mean literally? Are they using
like
Zoom?
March.
So there they did use Zoom as a platform.
Yes, sir. Or Google Handouts, but she wants to make it where it be kids in the front room doing school for 6 hours.
Right,
What
right.
Do you know what format the schools are using?
Zoom or Google, and they're trying to create their own.
Well, okay. So the reason I was asking that question is, for instance, in Jefferson County, Colorado, at least in middle school, they didn't do any actual classes. They did pretty much everything was straight to Google Classroom, and they posted a lesson expecting the kids to do the lessons on their own. And then they had, like a college would have, is basically office hours for 30 minutes a day per teacher, where the teacher was available to answer questions. So in all honesty, March, April, May, June, in Colorado and Jefferson County, there was no classroom instruction whatsoever, right? I think what we know is that every district, different cities, different counties, different states are all going to be different, right? It's going to be different if you're in South Dakota or Wyoming or, North Dakota versus you're in New York City versus you're in Detroit versus you're in Dallas, et cetera. So, so we're going to all have to adapt to that. What we probably should expect is some hybrid between they go physically to school and they're doing something at home, basically doing homeschooling without there actually being anybody teaching them and without actually any schooling. To overstate my level of disgust for what they did so far.
It doesn't matter what the schools do as well, because you're going to have a lot of parents that may not want to go back to the schools. So you've got to be able to deal with the hybrid you just said, Master Oliver, regardless of what the governor says.
Right. Well, and let's take that stat for a second. A study that I saw, and I think it was a pretty good, not study, but poll, was showing that 75% of parents would like there to be at least some option for the kids to go back into school physically. 25% were saying that they wanted it to be virtual, or for at least them to have an option to do virtual, right? And what that study does is it matches up pretty well with what we've been saying, since March or April, is there's a spectrum of students, 25% of which aren't basically leaving the house until there's 2 vaccines and 3 cures. There's 25%, some percentage that don't really care. And there's the middle 50% that are somewhere in between that are sensitive to, are you checking temperatures? Are they wearing masks? Are they social distancing? Is there hand sanitizer? Are people touching each other and touching things? Is the facility being sanitized? So there's probably 25% who don't care, 25% who you're not getting back on anything but virtual until, I would say, spring of next year, or until this whole thing either burns out or there's, a couple of vaccines going around, right? So, and then there's the great middle group. Now, when it comes to specifically how this impacts our marketing with schools, Adam, is one of the processes that we used last year, the year before. I had done it. We had done it for several of our Mile High Karate schools for many years, very successfully. But Jan kind of became our poster child for it, because they were booking literally. I think they did 100 enrollments, is the number I sort of remember, from setting up little booths and back to school nights and going out to back to school nights to meet the kids. Well, in almost every situation, I don't care where you are in US, Canada, UK, they're probably not doing anything that's similar to that, right? So that opportunity has to be shifted to what's our virtual version of that. Then we have what I've been watching here in Jefferson County, Colorado, and it may be fairly representative as the median, because it's not as bad as, say, Manhattan or Detroit, and it's not as good as South Dakota. So it's It's somewhere in between, not quite as bad as Florida or Texas right now. But what they're talking about is the kids that go back live, they're going to have a limited number of classes, limited number of passing periods. They're not going to do lunch hour in the lunch facility. They're going to have bag lunches that they eat at their desk in the school. I think they're not going to do like outdoor recess type of stuff, and they're not going to do the specials. So they're not going to do a separate music, a separate PE, and so forth, right? The other thing is they're not going to let outside people, including parents, into the building. Well, now that's back to like what I experienced here with Columbine, where they just completely shut everything down. However, what that also means is they're not going to have special stuff that's happening at the school. They're not going to have before and after school special, after school and before school enrichment programs. And therefore, in most cases, they're going to be much more open to and willing to coordinate with and support virtual classes that you hold for their students, probably up to and including in the facility, depending upon where you're at, right? So what we saw even back to March when things first started shutting down, we had one of our members who had a big PE teacher for the day already set up, and he ended up with 380 kids that showed up for the virtual PE teacher for the day, doing it by Zoom. So I believe that there are huge opportunities to do after school enrichment programs, of course, on a little different timeline than they would be, PE teacher for the day on a little different timeline. But the strategy, we talked about this back in March and April quite a bit, the strategy changes to, I have the school promote it, probably mostly by email and maybe voicemail, although it could be on their website. They could announce it for the kids who are physically in class. They can post it on Google Classroom or whatever other platforms they're using. So you get the school to promote it. Then you have to have a landing page. You can use a lead pages page or something similar. You have to have a landing page for them to do the registration. Another option is using Eventbrite because it'll let you pull the data as well. Mindy is our Eventbrite expert, so we could have her do another little session on that. But you use a landing page to have them register for it. That's your equivalent of a permission slip, right? Then what you have to do is you have to have a follow-up mechanism so that they register for it. You provide the free offer, and then you contact them to schedule the intro for them to come in and do a semi-private intro as a group. You can certainly also announce it when you do the live class that we're going to do these other additional times as a semi-private class, and we need to schedule an appointment. Now, if you do in fact have a session with 300 kids, it's going to be physically impossible to schedule them for appointments one-on-one the way we would like to do it if it was, say, a birthday party. So that means you've got to have the data ahead of time, and you've got to have a mechanism for following up with them, including texting, calling, emailing, mailing to them to schedule the appointment. Of course, the fall-off rate from them attending to appointment will be pretty high because there'll be a fair percentage of them that you just won't get hold of.
Yeah, but
Right.
I would point out that if you're doing this at home and you had a bunch of people that are doing it by Zoom, the parents are more likely to be there, see it, and you can share screens with the photo of the landing page if you make your landing page simple. I recommend if you have a blog system, you do a blog of your website / XYZ Elementary, and then they can click from that page to your Eventbrite form or whatever, so that then they have to go through your, it is very easy to do. And then now everything's contained in one place. So you could share the screen 3 or 4 times during your deal. So now the parents are right there. Hey, parents, by the way, make sure you pay attention to this. This is where you can get your extra free class or whatever your offer is. So in a lot of ways, this can be more effective. What Master Oliver's talking about, the drop-off might be higher, but this could be more effective than what we've done in the past. Because in the past, you might have had all the kids sitting there, no parents, and you had to send stuff to them, and then you had to call them and email them and use your permission slips. In this case, you'll get the permission slips, but also potentially, but also get this more direct access to the parents at exactly the same time.
Yeah, that's a really good point. because if the kids, when it's virtual, the kids are going to be at home. You're in all likelihood not going to get it to be virtual, where the school is scanning it, projecting it into the classrooms, and you're doing something like that. That's probably a bridge too far for them to coordinate, right? But you can get them to promote it for you, and you can get it where the kids register. And Master Moody raises a really good point. Compared to a normal PE teacher for the day, most of the parents are going to be also in the room. And so that then gives you the ability to have, you could, in fact, you could have an introductory video, you could have testimonials, you could have all that kind of stuff that happens in the middle. Because once you end up in this format, one, you're a little less hesitant about promoting like you might be a little bit in PE teacher for the day. And now that you have the parents there, you can do a lot. And Master Moody, to be explicit on what you were saying, is you can easily have a page that you share that has an appointment scheduling form, right? So for instance, schedule once. So you can have a form where there's, 10 times to schedule their next semi-private class, and you can direct them to go and schedule that. Now, you wouldn't let that be the only way that they make appointments, but you can then let them go and schedule that. On the other idea that we do, like twice a week for 3 weeks and do an after-school enrichment program, there's no reason why you still can't do exactly the same format. Meaning, you could do a 6 lesson for $29 or for $49, inclusive of the uniform. 100% of the money can go back to the school. Hell, they're going to have more financial needs than usual because they're trying to, put filtration systems in the school and temperature checks at the front door and all that kind of stuff, right? So, and again, I mean, you can imagine trying to do temperature checks on 400 kids coming in. I was just seeing there's companies that make like metal detectors that have a temperature check. There's another company, it's like an iPad on a stand, and you walk up to it and it beeps green or it beeps red, all that kind of stuff. But with that is we can do and again, I would recommend doing exactly what we've already proven works and make as few modifications as possible. So we could do the virtual PE teacher to promote an after-school enrichment program. They're doing it from home rather than at the school, so the timeline changes a little bit. But then you can do 6 lessons for $49 or whatever, donate all of the money back to the school. The main thing, Adam, is, and again, this is every county, every city is going to be much different, right? But what you have is a window of opportunity, usually a couple of weeks before classes start, where the teachers show up, and the teachers are doing training in one thing or another, right? One of the places that the teachers union is having the teachers strike is Jefferson County, right here where I'm sitting. But depending upon what they're doing and what the blowback is, you've got to, research it a little bit. Is a couple weeks before they're supposed to go back, whether it's virtual or live, that's usually the best time to communicate with the administrators, with the teachers, with the with all of those people, right? The mechanism to get hold of them, in part, is I know at least in Colorado they all have all of the elementary schools have a website, and on the website, every teacher has a parent contact method, either an email address or a phone number. That's one mechanism for getting to them. Another mechanism, of course, is if they're going to open physically, just show up at the school and talk to the people in the front office and find out when you can or how you can talk to the PE teacher, how you can talk to the principal, the other people involved. The dynamics is going to be interesting because if they're not doing any PE classes, what are they doing with the PE teachers? If they're not doing any after-school daycare, what's happening to the daycare people? And some of them may be doing daycare without doing live classes, because we know one of the issues that comes up is the free lunch programs and daycare issues with working parents, single moms who need daycare, that kind of stuff. So there'll be a lot of different iterations. Is this making sense so far, Adam? Yeah. the other element that we use through the schools is the, what I call the Children's Hospital flyers, but it's doing a charitable fundraiser promoted through the school. That's something like what's now a Groupon offer, something like $49 for 5 weeks or $29 for 5 weeks or something like that. That would also work. What we know in order is if I can do PE teacher for the day that promotes an enrichment program, that's going to have my best conversion because I get leads at the PE teacher and I get more of an introductory with the kids in the after school program that then convert better. Our numbers historically have been 20% of the kids participate in the after school enrichment program and a third of them enroll in the school. So 500 kids in the school, that's 100 in the enrichment program. That's 30, 35 enrollments, right? So that will still work. And in fact, my argument is it'll work better. The only flakiness in the whole thing is figuring out how to get hold of the staff, especially if they're not physically showing up at the school, and how to have the conversation with them. So you've got to walk through and figure those things out. Does that make sense, Adam?
Yes, sir. I've been asking the parents, and all of them are telling me what their school's plans are. Like some of them, most of them, the bus driver got to take temperature and the mask all day. But I've asked there's 4 districts, and I've asked them, what does your school tell us? Well, they sent us an email, and they sent a rebuttal the next hour later. So, yeah, because last 4 or 5 back to schools, I've been killing it. So that's what I was trying to figure it out.
Say that last part again.
The last 4 or 5 years, I've been back to schools, I've been killing it. I'm doing events, like, donating money, doing fundraisers, meeting the principals. Well, right now, the only way to meet the principal is with a biohazard suit. Walking like Outbreak.
You've been doing really well with the campaigns the last couple of years, and you want to do it really well again this year, is what I heard, right?
Yes, this is my Christmas. All of our Christmas.
Yeah. I think you can still do that. You just have to. I think the big key, Master Oliver, if I get added in there, I think what happens is if we don't get in early enough to talk to the schools, they start already getting in their pattern of we've already decided what we're going to do, and it's not going to include you. So the earlier you can get in there, the better, and have a conversation so that they can realize they can do some things with you.
Yeah. And in a normal year, this is anything but normal. In a normal year, what I would be doing is I would be setting my fall up in the spring and setting my spring up in the fall kind of at the latest, right? So, and even ahead of time, if I did something with a school in October, I would be setting up for next October. Right then and there. So I have my year set up quite a ways in advance. In practical terms, whatever you had set up already was in all likelihood going to have fallen apart pretty radically given this situation. But again, my belief is, and I believe that it's going to hold up with the data. What we know already that I said many times is holding true is that there's a big pent up demand. And in June and in July is people are looking for things that are both safe, that feel comfortable, but also all the data is showing. And by the way, what I keep hearing people say is, oh, we can't do this stuff because people don't have money right now. Well, that's not true. What is true is that there's a segment of the population that got hit pretty hard. Well, we also know at the bottom quartile of income, the bottom group of income, which isn't our target audience anyway, but at the bottom income levels, hairstylists and waiters and waitresses and so forth, they actually made more, at least through July, they actually, 60 or 70% of them made more money on unemployment than they were making working, right? So you have, in almost all cases, the top 50%, unless they were an executive for Marriott, unless they were, travel or medical or some specialized thing that got hit, in almost all cases, the top 50% are just fine financially. And in fact, the data is showing the opposite of what people use as a loser's limp, to steal Zig Ziglar's term, is what was reality is the people with the most disposable income also were sitting on the most money that they couldn't spend in March, April, May, because what they spend it on is they go get a massage, they get a personal trainer, They go to the theater, they go to concerts, they go to restaurants. All that stuff got shut down. So the stuff that hurt the bottom 25% is the same thing that the top 25 and the top 50%, they're sitting on money that basically they couldn't spend, and not because they didn't want to, right? So when you look at that, there's a lot of pent up demand to kind of get out of house arrest and do stuff, and either do stuff in person, out on the football field, in the karate school, whatever, or at least do something that's engaging and have virtual options so that those people who don't particularly feel safe still feel safe. Is this all making sense so far? So Adam, you're exactly right. Now, what are they going to do about back to school night? I have no idea. I think some of us are going to, by paying attention and researching, some of us are going to find really good opportunities, right? So we're going to find opportunities that are, oh, wow, they're doing everybody by Zoom, and they're doing a big virtual thing, and then they have registration rooms and all that stuff. Oh, wow. Well, now that we know that they're doing that, we can jump into that, and we can make, and make a ton of appointments. But if you're not really clearly communicating both with the school, staying on their email list, paying attention to what they're doing, paying attention to the school website, paying school to a district website, paying attention to the news, and talking to your parents, you won't find those opportunities. Or if those opportunities exist, you'll find out about them when it's too late. Does that make sense? So you have to really jump on all those things quickly.
Yeah, Master Oliver, that sounds really interesting. The schools are gonna have to have some way of talking with parents before they start whatever, whether it's showing them how to start Zoom or anything, and that might be they let you on for 5 minutes to talk about, hey, we're sponsoring this Zoom karate class, right? Or whatever, right?
Yeah, I mean, it can be, hey, since it's impractical in the current environment to have PE for the fall, we're offering one substitute for PE, and the first few lessons are completely free. In fact, what we're going to do is then we're going to do a 6-lesson package for over half price, which is $49, 100% donated back to your school so that they can help with the modifications for COVID. And then if you want to follow through from there, great, right? So, and as you're talking to the school, you just got to make sure you're announcing this is what's in it for them, and it's all done as a charitable activity. It's not done as a business marketing activity, because that's their pet peeve. You don't want to get into this, well, we don't allow for-profit businesses to come in and market. Well, they do that all the time, but you've got to make sure this is our community outreach. We've been doing this for 22 years, or I could say 37 years. And in the midst of all the COVID stuff, we know it's even more important, like dramatically more important. So here's what we're doing now to help support, right? So it's always got all of that language tied in. Anything to add to that, David? That was great. I think his phone rang. Anyway, any questions about all this? Is this all making sense?
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely, Adam.
Here in Minneapolis, we just found out yesterday that everything is going full distance learning.
Yep.
And it's when I worked for John Worley, I had no issues getting into the schools, but we're having a hell of a time in the city getting into schools. Mainly because they see martial arts as teaching violence. We've run into that so much, and we've overcome it through a lot of schools, but that's been our biggest issue, getting in to like private schools, especially around us.
Well, that's just a matter of educating them on what you're going to be teaching, right? The reframe on that is, Mrs. Jones, Mr. Smith, it's actually the opposite. What we're finding is between cartoons, violent video games, movies, etc., is there's so many depictions of martial arts that are completely counterproductive. really what a child learning martial arts is all about, or an adult for that matter as well, is learning complete self-control. It's about learning self-discipline. It's about learning enough about how to protect themselves and be safe, that they don't end up in a fight on the playground, that they don't have any of those issues. What you find is, and all the studies prove this, Master Moody got his PhD studying bullying and the effect of martial arts. But all the research shows is, number one, bullies don't do martial arts. Two is martial arts doesn't create bullies. Number three is that the best protection for a child to become bully proof, to not be picked on, is to become a black belt in martial arts, not because they're going to fight back, but they just don't end up having suffering the same problems. Is that an accurate enough recap of
Sure.
that, Master?
Yeah. And
Yeah.
we did, and we did a whole instructional webinar on that.
That's right. That's right. And I'm sure that's posted in the Facebook group and in the member site, but Bob might go tag it for you because it would help. But Aaron, that really shouldn't be the problem that you encounter. In part, it shouldn't be the counter because it's so contrary to reality that it's laughable, right? But what it does require is you've got to have the conversation with them. Now, I used to send out a letter, and God help me if I'd ever be able to find it. One of the letters that I used to send out was basically said exactly what I just said is, one of the things that we're doing as a community service is to educate the kids on what martial arts is about. That's about discipline and focus and confidence. It's not about fighting. It's not about conflict. And in fact, what we teach is nonviolent conflict resolution. And we certainly teach the kids how to be, bully proof, and certainly how not to be bullies or involved in any of that kind of stuff, right? But it's also the conversation I always had with them on the way in is, we're going to do this PE teacher for the day program, but what it teaches is respect for teachers. It teaches learning skills, focus your eyes, focus your body, focus your mind, how to use the lessons of martial arts to be a better student. It teaches respect at home, and it teaches how to respect other people and how to be nonviolent conflict resolution, right? I will say over the years, and Master Moody, maybe this has changed over the years, but a lot of what I saw conflict resolution in elementary schools was extremely unproductive from my estimation, right? And so what you've got to do is you've got to get inside their worldview and show how this is helping with their worldview, not trying to counterpoint their worldview. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. But again, somebody who says, oh, martial arts is violent, they just don't understand what it is. Now, I'll freely admit that, UFC and all of this stuff hasn't helped us with that, right? But in the 80s, I had the same conversation, which was Power Rangers and Ninja Turtles and all of this stuff, especially Power Rangers was always horrible, right? Is with all of that stuff, the kids are getting the wrong impression and the wrong idea. And what we want to do is teach them that it's about respect, it's about focus, it's about discipline, and it's about nonviolent conflict resolution. And here's the approach that we take. Does that help a little bit, Aaron?
Yeah. I might steal your idea and send a letter out first, just to try to get in the door a little bit easier.
Well, no, and in fact, if you want to do a rough, send it over, and then I'll tune it up for you, and then send it back, and we can share it with everybody.
Okay.
Aaron, I guess the one thing I might ask is, and maybe this is illustrative for everybody, is how many schools have you talked to where they said they don't like it because of karate or violence?
Almost every one of our local area schools around the gym.
Okay, so
Eliminate the term gym, by the way, for now and forever.
Oh, sure.
And how many specifically did you talk to? Did you talk to individually for this?
Come back to me and I'll give you a better number.
Rough answer.
At least 7 or 8.
Okay, so you talked to 7 or 8 of the principals then?
I couldn't even get to the principal. I had to go through the after-school program directors. So they kind of put a stop. I wasn't able to get to any of the actual leadership of the schools.
Okay, well that's important information.
Okay.
Okay, you were asking some questions there, Master. I don't want you to interrupt that.
Well, no, I mean, that's the thing that I think, number one, there's probably more than 7. A couple things on that list. There's probably more than 7 schools, because you got Montessori schools, charter schools, private schools, and other schools that are in your area in a 5-mile radius. So there's more than that. If you've talked to them one time, for everybody here, a lot of what we deal with schools and we talk about getting into schools and working with schools, it's really a numbers game, both in terms of quantity of times we talk to them, the way we talk to them, and we're talking about another way, which is sending a letter. I like to send my book, but you could send a book that you like, that it's really relevant to how martial arts is valuable, or something that you want to talk about. Sending them a package of great information in a FedEx box. So sending them stuff. So there's depth in the way that you talk to them that Master Oliver really covered really well. But there's also other people you could talk to, the PTO, the principal. So there's kind of 2 dimensions per school. And the third dimension is number of people. So if you talk to 7 schools, I get it, Aaron, you talk to everybody, I believe you. But there's also the Montessori schools, which are great to work with sometimes, not as many kids, unfortunately. But private schools, you know, they have a lot of money. Those are great ones to work with. Charter schools, and so on. So there may be more things that you could work with. And I would just kind of like to illustrate for everybody on the call. Very frequently we have people say, well, I had a problem, I got stuck working with schools. There's a roadblock. And the roadblock frequently is not taking advantage of either the depth of ways to talk to them, the depth of number of people to talk to, or the quantity of schools or opportunities that you have to talk to. So there's really 3 big dimensions that we may not have done. And, you know, if you get banging in your head against the wall because that district has a crazy idea about martial arts and violence, I might go talk to all the private schools and charter schools and things, and then kind of come back to them with another method. So just one thought. It's really a big numbers game when we deal with schools.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, but let's expand on that. Number one is you were talking to the wrong person.
Yep.
Okay. Now, having said that, that's usually the easiest person to get cooperation from. However, if I'm doing after school daycare, what my picture is immediately when you say I want to come in and teach a karate class to your kids is my picture is they're running out of control already on the playground, and now you want to teach them how to hit and punch each other more effectively. Right? So I mean, literally, and most of those people are not, frankly, both the highest on the IQ scale, nor are they particularly educated, the ones that are running that particular program, right? Yeah. So what you've got to do with the particular group is say, do you have any problem with, with them hitting and punching each other on the playground? Do you have, problems with play that's too rough, et cetera? Well, yeah, we have some of that, and we have some bullying. Say, well, this is going to be your solution. Because what we're going to teach them is how to think properly about the martial arts and the fighting that they're seeing on TV, that they're seeing in video games, that they're seeing in all this other stuff. And we're going to teach them that it's about respect and teach them non-violent conflict resolution, et cetera. Right? But, sure. But let me go back to that. And by the way, Aaron, welcome. You're brand new. And welcome Bob Olinghouse on the meeting too. This is, I think Bob's first. There's Bob over there with the gray beard. So welcome into our meetings, and I think we may have a couple of other people who are pretty much brand new here.
Yes,
and
sir.
Bob,
Donna down there. She's got LVMA Fogelsville. Hey, Donna. Good to see you with 30 Race.
Oh, there you go. Fantastic.
Hi. It's Dana Eldridge. It's been a while, Master Oliver, but it's good to see you.
Yeah, great to see you. Great to see you. But
that's Eric.
Going back to getting into the schools, the reason I thought about that is normally for new members, we don't spend much time on how to do elementary schools because they have a tendency to say exactly what you said, Aaron, is I went and talked to 2 or 3 of them and they said no because, and the martial arts is too violent is kind of an unusual one. I had problems with movie theaters back in the 80s because one of our district managers thought that. So I've encountered it before. But usually they get pushed back because, no, we don't let nonprofit businesses do this, or no, we're all booked up for the year. There's a variety of reasons and excuses. So usually we focus on this more after somebody's been here for a while. But what we do focus on usually immediately is, let's go do the big 5K run. Let's go to the 10K run. Let's go do a movie booth at Black Widow. And of course, all that stuff is shut down right now, right? So, but the mechanism that's easiest to get in and talk to the right people, and by get in, that may be line up a 3-way phone call. It may be a Zoom meeting, or it may be physically walking into the school, depending upon what they're doing and who's where, right? What I would normally do is I would do a poll of every kid that I have, with their parents, and find out where each and every one of them go to school, right? Then I would take like my top 20 parents who are, a joy to the spirit, who are helpful in one thing or another. Because if they're a pain in your ass, they're going to be a pain in everybody's ass, right? But I would take my top parents, and I would just ask them, would you mind introducing me to the principal and introducing me to the PE teacher? It would be helpful if you would let them know how valuable this has been for your child. Some of them think that what we do is violent, that we're teaching the kids to fight and so forth. It would be helpful if you could help us explain what it really is all about. And then what you do is, if you physically can walk in, Mrs. Jones, when are you going to be at the school? If it's before school starts, when's a good time I could meet you there? If it's after school starts, when's a good time you're picking up Billy or Susie? And literally just, have them walk you in and introduce you to everybody, and you have a built-in testimonial there, right? And what that does is it takes it out of some business person walking in, or some wacky martial arts guy walking in, and takes it into, here's a person who's been teaching one of our students, and here's all the things that we've already done productively for that student, and she's sharing that in gushing terms, hopefully. Does that make sense, Aaron? So that's the easiest, right? The second thing you do want to do is, like for the after school enrichment programs and stuff, we have a full presentation packet. So if you search in the Facebook group, there's several different, Master Moody has a partner in education, I think is what you call it, Master Moody,
Yes, sir.
packet that's in there. We have an after school enrichment program packet that's in there. And what you'll see, for instance, on the after school enrichment packet is it's a description of what the program is. It's all the homework assignments we do with the kids. And then it's a whole bunch of testimonials preferably from PE teachers, principals, etc. But until you have that, it's testimonials, a package of testimonials from parents about all the great stuff you do with their kids, right? So what I would suggest first is FedEx that to all the schools, assuming they're going to be there. Email it to all the people. My target audience is usually includes the after school person, but they're the one that I'm least concerned with. But I target the PE teacher, the PTO or PTA president, vice president, the principal, and if there's a vice principal, I target them, right? Some of the schools have like a counselor or something. I don't find elementaries do that as much as middle schools, but if they have a counselor or some other person with some other relevant designation, you get the packet to them as well, right? But if physically you get it to them in a FedEx envelope or a priority mail envelope so that they pay attention, I would always FedEx it to the school, physically go deliver it to all the schools, and then a day or two later, just walk in and talk to the people. Now what you may have to do is FedEx it to the school, email the package to them, email them a link to the package, talk to voicemail and email them, right? But you go at it from all those different angles. Now, the lessons that we put in, you can go to milehighkarate.com, and there's a couple of educator links there. Well, one says after school program, the other I think says educator link. If you look at that, there's all of the information. In fact, there's the cover letter for the teachers. So that's a good starting point for you, Aaron, now that I'm thinking about it. But there's also the homework assignments, and the homework assignments are do your homework, respect for teachers, thank you, I love you, respect for parents, do it the first time, and something else. So you start showing them those homework assignments. You show them the different tasks that they're doing. You show them the parent interaction materials, and it's very difficult for them to continue to say that for some reason this might be a violent activity, right? But you do want to know that, you know, the person who's in charge of watching them while they're on the playground, that's probably the first thing that goes, oh, now somebody wants me to teach them a karate class in the playground so they can more effectively punch and kick each other. You've got to reframe that one really quickly. Does that help, Aaron?
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
And Aaron, what I was looking for before we started the meeting was you had posted a pretty nice breakdown of some of the things that you were doing and what some starting point with some questions and so forth. It might be helpful for everybody, but any of those things that we haven't talked about so far? I was looking for a meeting I didn't find it. I read it when you posted it, then I couldn't get to it during the meeting here.
The questions that I put up on Facebook.
Yeah.
Let me go back to them.
Okay. While you're doing that, Bob, you had a question about bringing yoga mats and shoes and so forth. What was that, Bob? You're muted. You have to unmute.
Got me?
There you go.
All right. The keeping the area that they're working out clean, I was thinking about requiring that they actually bring in a yoga mat of their own that they could take out and keep clean on their own. And also what you had said about, well, like Brett something, but you had said about shoes recently. Would that have a mat shoe required? Just trying to make people feel better about the coronavirus thing.
Sure. That's interesting. I hadn't thought in terms of them bringing back their. So you're talking about when they're sitting on the floor doing stretches and so forth, so that they don't feel like they're. You know, most of our solution has been a real thorough disinfecting between classes, right? And that checklist, which I recommend everybody pull back out. If you're new, you may not have gotten it, but it's on the Facebook group. It's in the member site. In fact, it's on the top left-hand corner of the member site, I think, as well as it's been mailed. I don't know how many times now, but our checklist was check temperature at the front door, private branded mask, you know, do a custom mask for the school. If not, you know, go get a bunch of the disposables, require mask in the school at all times, measure off the floor so you can do 6 foot distancing on the floor or more to keep them spaced out, right? Require they wash their hands before class and or hand sanitizer on the way in. Also, I suggested, you know, disposable gloves. You know, have the little disposable gloves. Some people are like wearing gloves here and there. Well, really, it's kind of a bad idea because now they go pick up viruses everywhere. But, you know, I would not let them wear gloves into the school. But if they're into gloves, they can take those off and give them some disposables and let them throw them away on the way out. The other thing that I think Paul Miller brought it up initially is looking at the HVAC system. And you can add in pretty big HEPA filter systems that screen out like 99.9%. And then there's UV systems that you could add in. I might add that you can also get big portable units that are commercial units. Be careful about just picking up an air purifier, because if you have 10,000 square foot of facility and you have a fairly high volume of people, you know, don't pick up something that's good for 600 feet. If you're going to do some kind of portable thing, you probably need, you know, double or triple what the square footage coverage they're saying, and you need to make sure it's a commercial, not a residential capacity. The other thing I think to add what you were saying, Paul Miller, is doing the UV disinfectant overnight as well. So you could do the UV light disinfectant all the surfaces overnight every night. You can be doing disinfectant between every classroom. And by the way, all of this stuff you should be listing out for the students and communicating with the students all the stuff you're doing, right? Just as one more way to make them feel comfortable. Bob, I don't think the yoga mat's a bad idea. And I don't think the wearing shoes is a bad idea. I'm not sure there's any research at all that somebody's going to get it off of their feet. If we come across something like that, it's worth knowing. Has anybody encountered people who are afraid of being barefoot during this time? I'm afraid of being barefoot in the school because I have bad feet, but other than that.
We're using the yoga mats in a different way. We have I'll get it over here. We send them home to the students that are home, because at home, you know, they might be on carpet or they might be somewhere, and we're sending them a 4 foot by 2 foot piece of yoga mat for them to train on, and then they have a spot in the middle. So like the little kids, we tell them make sure they stand on their spot. So we try to increase the discipline in the school or when they're doing virtual classes. So then it's just another thing we can send home to them when they're doing virtual classes, so they can have even a higher quality virtual class experience.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Yeah, so you can buy these yoga mats we bought 100 feet of yoga mat that are easy to cut for it was $115.
Oh, well.
So it basically cost me, plus shipping to send to a student, it cost me like about $6-7 per student to send the yoga mat. So we just took a piece of electrical tape, and it's got a circle there, and we just use Sharpie and put a spot in the middle. I don't know if I use spots on my mat so kids know where to stand. Some people don't like doing that, whatever. But on the floor, it's really consistent. Then the students at home, if they're 4 years old, now they always put the mat down. They're doing virtual classes. That's a control issue a little bit when you're doing virtual classes, which, by the way, we got to do that, class on some of the control issues with virtual classes that we try to overcome and fix. But the mat allows them then to be a little bit more disciplined, be a lot more disciplined, and control the class a little better.
Yeah, again, a great idea. Yeah, Bob, I don't think there's any downside to it. I do think you want to be sure and do the other things, right? Is the temperature, and I've been posting periodically, but the last one I did was a graphic that Cinemark Theaters, I think, had sent out about all the things that they were doing and about sanitizing the seats, and they were making sanitation wipes available and requiring masks and all the stuff that they were doing. You want to go overboard on that stuff, right? Put the big graphic up at the front door, and make it real clear, if you've been feeling under the weather, if you have a cough or a sneeze or, a temperature, do the virtual class at home. Don't come to the school physically, but then doing the little checks on the way in. Like I was down at Kaiser Permanente, and they actually set up like we would do at a big live outdoor event. They set up a tent with a table outside the front door. And so you went to the table and checked in, and then they did a little temperature check and asked where you were going and asked, have you been feeling bad or had a cough or anything? No. And then they gave you a mask, and then they sent you in from there. You didn't even get inside the building without going through their little tent to get to that point. And then they had, the dots on the sidewalk spread out 6 feet for people if they had to wait in line to get into the tent. And I think all that stuff is important, just because it's going to give the students a sense of you're really taking it seriously and you're paying attention or not, right? The other thing on that spectrum is, again, I'm just going to keep beating this to death. One is, I wouldn't try to fight any of this stuff. Now, regardless of what your personal opinion is, your political opinion, all of that stuff, what we want to target is the most scared soccer mom who's sitting at home watching CNN all day. That's the one that we want to make sure we get them to feel comfortable, right? So regardless of any other feelings we have about masks are good, masks are bad, all of this stuff, make sure we realize who our audience is. For the kids, it's the soccer mom who's been scared to death, and you're trying to accommodate their fears on all this stuff and go above and beyond. The other thing is to, again, I'm going to beat this to death. Don't be so pushy and eager that everybody has to physically come into the school right now. If they're doing the remote classes and they're doing Zoom classes and they're unwilling to come to a big live event at the park, that's fine. If they're willing to do virtual and they're willing to come to the Zoom classes and they're willing to come to the football field, but they don't want to walk physically into the building, that's fine. If they want to do all four and alternate, that's fine. Let's not be in the mode of only counting people as students who are like back physically in the school, or being frustrated, even argumentative with students who aren't at that point yet that they feel comfortable with that. Does that make sense for everyone? I think that's extremely important. Bob, I don't know if that answered your question or not, but there's a start. Have you made any progress with the facility to be there full time as opposed to part time?
We're meeting today at 4:30, so.
Okay. If you want, give me a call ahead of or behind that meeting. I'm having a meeting at 5:30 my time, which is 6:30 your time. We've got one of our black belts wants to start a new school, so I'm getting that up to speed as well. By the way, it's a wonderful time to be negotiating a retail facility. It's a best time in the last 3 years because I would say February was one of the worst times in recent memory to negotiate a retail lease because they were all walking on in tall grass, to use that expression, and had competition. And now they have at least a whole lot of restaurants, martial arts schools, yoga schools, dance schools, and fitness centers all going belly up. So it's good timing on that, Bob, either way. Good. Any other questions here before we move forward? Bob, are you proud of us for pausing and waiting for somebody to jump in rather than forcing them?
I am.
There you go. Okay. Did you have some questions?
No, not really. I'm still having the same problem I had yesterday or the whole last week is kind of the mental mindset of my staff and getting them to jump the hurdle of time management.
Mm-hmm.
That's like the biggest thing for me. I'm working on simplifying the process for them a little to make it a little more dummy friendly. Not that anybody's incapable in my staff. It's just, I think that the fact that we do require so many steps to make sure that we're fully engaging people all the time. That's a little daunting to somebody that for the most part, for their last 10 years of career, they came in, they taught the classes, they wrote down the notes, they did attendance. Do you know what I mean? And so now I'm converting my staff into people who are actively engaged, and they're like, well, why can't we just hire an administrator? I was like, because no one's going to be able to do it as well as you, because you know the kids, you know what the progress is, and that's your job, is to make sure that the kids are and the families feel engaged, are part of this community, are engaged in doing everything that they're supposed to be doing. Plus, if they don't show up before anybody else will, because you know that they're not in their spot. So you're the person that should be calling them because you're the one that is engaging them. And so I'm having a really hard time changing their mindset. That's my biggest thing.
Well,
I'm sure there's a lot of people's issues when they have more than one person on their staff other than themselves.
Well, and the it's always
You froze up there, Master Oliver.
Still frozen.
So it's
Oh, and I just lost the most sage wisdom that fixed all my problems.
that's probably really good. How much time are you having these guys spend doing the things you're talking about?
Well, I'm trying to get them to spend 50% of their time doing this because that's really where it needs to be, like with the marketing and paying attention and, you know, doing the follow-up. But if it's built into what they do normally, you know, like this is what we do. Like you know, it's a habit thing, right? It's getting them into the habit of doing it correctly and regularly. It's building those habits that are hard. And then, you know, like, you know, being a driver without being a, you know, BITC.
So what I would say when you're trying to implement systems that you always have to be careful of, and for everybody on this call, your main priorities are getting enough people in, and this would be true for you too, making sure that you get enough of those people to, and so the marketing tasks that they have are critical, getting enough of those people to enroll and then keeping them, right? And so keeping them means renewals or whatever the process is down. Those are the three big priorities right on this call. And those would be the three big priorities for you. Then having staff support that, having staff implement that, we have to be kind of careful. I mean, you're very intellectual, very smart. And because we've had conversations before, everybody on this call that I've talked to is, so the danger you have is I've got 6 pieces of the system, and there might be 100 pieces, but there may be 6 pieces you want them to do. The best way to implement things like that is usually have 1 or 2 things they're supposed to do now, make sure that gets done. And it may only be a couple days that they have to work on this till they get it down, but maybe 2 weeks. Get 1 or 2, and what are the highest priority ones of those that meet those 3 criteria? Get more people in, which is number 1, make sure they get enrolled and make sure they stay. So in that order, get more people in is the number 1. So if whatever one of those systems is you're trying to get them to put in place, that's more the problem. So I don't know if you have a time management problem or a training problem.
It's probably a me problem because, you know, obviously this, the fish stinks, right? But I'm going to give you an example. This is what, I am not kidding you. We did a camp, little, you know, 2-3 hour camp for the littlest ones. It was awesome. We had 8 kids. Everybody was happy. On Friday, right, they have a little performance. We do ballet, so, you know, like it's a demonstration, right? We do a little performance. Friday morning, I said to the person that was supposed to be helping, hi, go snap a picture of the kids with your phone. Each kid, make them all smile, and then upload by tapping in Canva. I don't know if you've all used it, but it's like it's so easy. It's there, you don't need to know.
But anyway, they're supposed to do this. Yeah, right. Okay.
So I was like, click their pictures in the little certificate for this camp that we did, right? It turned into, and I made them a pictures and then instruction, picture, instruction, picture, instruction, and like a screencast of this is how you do it. Super easy, right? And I was very clear with instructions.
Yeah, can I ask you something about that? What you just said, how does it in massive priority of all the things you're having them do, how does it most highest priority meet getting new members in?
Well, it was, I'm just giving you an example of like the flip out, you know, like I give them a task and I'm very specific on how this task is supposed to be done. You know, this would have taken me maybe 2 minutes. Somebody that's never done it, 10 minutes. Print out certificates. Basically, was the goal, right? And it took them 2 hours, and it was like a full explosion. And not only that, but they like had like a mental spasm about it because it was so outside. I don't know computers. I don't know apps. I'm like, dude, this is not rocket science here. Well, and I wasn't rude to them, but like right now, saying out loud to all of you,
I get it. And it may be that those are things that you need to do. You want to pick your battles correctly.
Oh, sure.
And that is something I'm sure you can get them to do. Where does that fit on the priority order of
That's
one?
retention, you know?
It's probably not, huh?
It's part of the retention, you know, like I got these.
Yeah, but we can always make that argument. I guess I'd question you on whether if you ordered it 1 to 100, it's probably not in the top 5.
That was just an example of like the FUBAR that happened. Last week.
But time out though. You've got so many things you want them to do. What I heard was, and everybody's probably got this as the managers, and you are frustrated that they're not getting all this stuff done and that they're not managing their time and tasks so that they learn the skills that you want them to learn to do their job properly. Is that a good problem statement?
Maybe. It does. I mean, I think you're simplifying a larger problem of having their mindset like open to learning a skill and then, you know, saying, hey, I'm having a problem instead of like losing their marbles.
I get it. And what I am very much simplifying it. And I think for you to manage them properly, you need to simplify the number of tasks that you ask them to do. Mm-hmm. First, there's 2 pieces of this. Number 1 is limit the number of tasks that you implement as new tasks at a time. So there may only be 1 or 2. I know that sounds crazy and you think, well, gee, it's not that big a deal. They should be able to do this. We can
slow is fast. I get it.
And limit the number of things, number 1, so that you can have enough time to train them, verify, make sure they do it, make sure it becomes a habit before you get the next task in. So I have a 600-page operations manual. All my staff does all of that stuff. They do everything. We don't pull the operations manual out except for when we're training. Then I pull it out and then we go through the training. Then they really don't look at it, but they do all that stuff. They all do all that stuff.
Right.
But when I started implementing it, it was just 1 page, an opening checklist to make sure they clean the school right. Then after weeks, I had the closing checklist. And then after weeks, we had the other stuff. And then after weeks. So that's part 1 is my advice is, and probably for everybody, when you're implementing systems, don't have them do too many things at a time. And the danger in our group is that you want to do a lot of stuff. The second thing is, what's the most important thing for you? Is it to get more new members right now? Is if you got a bigger retention hole, or is it, you know, cash? I mean,
all of it, you know, like.
Well, but you can't pick all of it. If you can only pick one, if you can only pick one, and then you had to pick 1 or 2 things that you're gonna make sure they do right today and tomorrow, then you'll be really successful on getting 2 or 3 of those things right. Then you move on to the next thing, and then you move on to the next thing, and then you'll be successful getting the 12 things they need to do right correct. If you look at gee, they're not coming to me when they have a problem. They're not doing this. They're not doing right. The reality of it is, most of my employees, and most historically, I have hundreds of employees over the years. Yeah, they probably won't ever do that right. There's lots of technical stuff they have to learn to do. There's lots of little things they have to do. There's lots of, you know, we make them do the closeouts at the end of the day. There's lots of how they do the, you know, different parts of the things with the belts and how they do the testings. If you were going to work at my school tomorrow and you had to do everything, you'd choke. But I got 15-year-olds that can do it. Doesn't mean they're better than you, but you would learn part 1, and then you'd learn after a while part 2. And mostly it sounds to me like they're choking on too much stuff. Your priority would be, what's the most important thing that's going to get me a best return on the investment of time I have in them?
Mm-hmm. Just so you know, I only gave her the 1 task, and like it was like a full-on explosion.
So there was only 1 task that you had to make sure, and that was the most important one.
Well, for that day, for her like entry levelness, it was
sure.
Take a picture, give them a certificate, ask them when they're coming back next, write it down. Like that was her job. You know, check them out, do the like very simple. Like,
okay.
Check everybody in, make sure that they are, you know, healthy and well. Hand them their attendance card, right? And then once everybody's in the classroom, take a picture of their happy smiley faces and put it in this certificate.
There's another rule I use that might be helpful. My rule is if I haven't written it down on a document on how to do steps in a task, and if I haven't told them 27 times, up until those two criteria are met, it's my fault. After that, it's their fault.
Fair enough.
So if it hasn't been written down.
They did have good written skills.
Okay.
And
Good.
videos.
So one is it's written down. The second is 27 times. Yeah.
We only have to do this once a week for 6 weeks.
Sure. I get it. That's my rule. You can take that or not. But how many times, my rule is always, how many times do I need to tell somebody something before that I determine that it's them and not me? Mine is 27. So
Can I ask a question, Master Moody? Of
I'm here.
Alexia? Are these instructors or are these office people?
These are, well, the girl was a office person.
An office person, that is their job. That should have all been trained and explained. And if this is the first summer camp they ran, or this is the first time you're doing that task, then it's something that I always like to never give anybody a job that I can't do. So if I can do it, I'm going to show them how to do it the first time. The second time I watch them do it, correct them, until we finally get it. But I always like to clarify those because I don't want my instructors tied up with tasks that aren't related to teaching. But I want my my office to make sure they're helping take some of those managerial type tasks away from my
ended up being backwards, and this is what keeps happening.
It's just training. And you just have to realize that some people, you write it, you give it to them, you give them a video, they won't get it. The only way they're going to get it is watch you do it, and then you watch them do it. I found that way is the 99% of the people can get it. And if they can't get it after doing those different options that Master Moody gave you and I just gave you, then maybe they're untrainable.
Yeah, and I understand the difference between the two. It's just, I think one of my biggest problems, and I don't want to take up everybody's time, but like, I think one of my biggest issues is that, you know, I feel
you got to put your priorities. And Master Oliver has the best explanation of it. Go ahead, Master Oliver.
Sorry about that.
But this is valuable for everybody who's running a school. They're going to have employees.
Finish what you were getting ready to say.
Like I said, I was going to say that come on, Master Smith, what's going on, man? No, it's okay. One of the I think that this is just my inexperience as, like, I've only ever had like an assistant that was like at my beck and call, and I just was like, go and do this. And, you know, and now I was a manager at my mom, this school prior to being an owner, right? And when you're a manager, you have to end up figuring out how to do most of the stuff, and then you train the staff, blah, 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 right? But as an owner, training the managers to train the staff, that's a new skill set I don't have. And I'm having a hard time, you know, bridging that information gap with my communications. Like, I know it's coming from me, as in I'm not communicating effectively. My biggest thing is like, other than, you know, write it down, show them how to do it, watch them do it, correct them, etc. Is there any other like best practices other than those two things that Master Smith and Master Moody has said, like that?
The thing that Master Moody said,
people to be flexible. I don't know, like. It's a mindset thing. I swear, it's like, is there a way to teach like open-mindedness? Because I swear they like decide that they can't do it before they've even tried. And I'm like, dude, this is literally what we teach every day in the school, how to be gritty, how to be, you know, flexible, and how to be determined, and, you know, make decisions and go after it. And like my staff refuses to like be larger minded and more open minded. Not, they don't refuse. It's just, I have there's a communication barrier for me. And I'm wondering if there's anything I can do within the leadership frame to get them to be used to being more open-minded,
Yeah,
flexible?
I know I missed a bunch of this conversation, but let me take a stab at this, and hopefully it's not off base from what you guys all talked about. I'm sorry, but our power, internet, everything went out for like 2 minutes, and then it took it another 5 minutes for everything to come back on. It's never had that happen before, but probably the whole,
Probably that hurricane down in Florida.
yeah, because it's 90 degrees and sunny here. But let me answer the question a different way. Are most of these part-time or full-time staff?
Full-time.
Okay. Well, to me, the starting point is for everybody to be on task in terms of mission and goals. And so if you start with getting everybody together, because what most of us do is we just kind of go to work tomorrow because we went to work yesterday, and we just kind of keep going about what we did, right? And especially with, as you described earlier, folks who have been around for a long time and they're kind of set in their ways and they've established a routine, is if I don't really get everybody together with common goals in mind, a common direction we're going, and a common understanding of what we're trying to accomplish, then what they have a tendency to do is do this is my job, this other stuff isn't my job routine on you, right? Or they do I've always done it this way. And of course, the answer to I've always done it this way is we don't want to keep getting the results that we got with you doing it the way you've always done it, right? You have the conversation of, if you keep doing what you've been doing, you're going to keep getting what you've been getting, and what you've been getting isn't what we're looking for here, right? Mm-hmm. So I would start with, especially in the crazy Corona times, I would start by getting everybody together and get them on the same page. We used to do like a 2 or 3 day retreat in the mountains, where I would, and I'm not sure I would do that right now, but some intensive time, at least on video or face to face, where you really have everybody clarify what are we all about? What's our organization about? What are we ultimately trying to accomplish? What are we trying to accomplish with our students? What are we trying to accomplish in the community? What are we all trying to accomplish? Let's talk about what the financial objectives of the organization is. What are we trying to accomplish as far as number of students, longevity of students, revenue, profitability? What are we trying to accomplish in terms of everybody's income here? Or do we want it to be cut and go down and be minimized, or do we want it to grow? What are our objectives? And be very, get very specific. How many new prospects do we have? How many new intros do we need? How many new students do we need? What retention rate do we need? What revenue do we need in order to accomplish that, right? And then once you do that, it sounds pretty laborious, right? But once you do that, then it's easier to get everybody on the same page of, well, you're a teacher. As a teacher, your number one goal is student retention. And the number one way we're going to evaluate you is on student dropout versus student retention rate. Number two way we're going to evaluate you is on renewal rate. And the last, although still important way we're going to evaluate you is based upon their actual physical accomplishments, right? So, and again, whether it's in ballet, dance, or martial arts, teachers have a tendency to become a little self-righteous and to become overly concerned with the technical and not be focused on the number of students who develop to that point and what the retention rates are.
But what about quality? I mean, the program, the curriculum. I'm like, show up every day, teach a plie, do it well, but ...
Well, I'll tell you the retort to that is, let me explain to you that 90% of your students suck. Well, what do you mean they suck? Well, if they drop out in 6 months, they never got particularly good at what you're teaching. And every month beyond when they drop out, they're getting worse.
Yes.
So you're pointing out to me the capability and the competence of fourth-year students or fifth-year students or sixth-year students has nothing to do with truly developing quality. Developing quality is having the vast majority of people we start with still be there 3, 4, 5 years in order for them to have enough longevity to accomplish anything. Right?
Oh my gosh, it's so beautiful. You should make that like one of our quotes and put it up. That's so pretty.
Absolutely.
Recorded
But
so you can play it for them.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, like oh my, like that's beautiful. Like
Yeah.
I wish that people could get that on their mindset. That would be great. That's like really important because I think that that's what the disconnect is. Is like they don't see the value in doing the steps to keep the retention. And by doing these certain things on a regular basis, the likelihood of retention is going to go up because the people are engaged, and you get them engaged by doing these steps.
Yeah.
I think, like the logical side of me understands that. And I think that maybe that's the disconnect.
Yeah, it's important to get to them emotionally. When I do these little regional seminars from time to time, what I did, and especially the bigger the group and the more traditional they are, the more it irritates them, and therefore you get an emotional reaction, which is what you have to have. But I would always start with, let me start with sharing an idea for you that you're not going to like. The vast majority, no matter how rough and tough and competent you think you are, the vast majority of every student you've ever touched sucks. And don't tell me about the one world champion you developed. The vast majority did not get there. Now, let me ask you, while you ponder that for a second and get angry and agitated and try to prove to me your lineage and all that great stuff you've done and how many champions you developed, let me ask you a different question. Who in here thinks your retention to black belt is better than the graduation rate at the worst public school system in North America?
Good
which used to be Detroit public schools. And I did it initially, I used Harvard's graduation rate. Harvard graduates 92% of the people who, enter Harvard with a 4-year degree. That never seemed to resonate with them. But who in here thinks your graduation rate is better than the worst public school system in the United States? And they would all raise their hands. And I forget what it was, but at the time, Detroit's graduation rate was 47% or, some abysmal number. Well, there aren't dance schools and martial arts schools that are graduating 50% of people who enroll 4 years later, much less 12 years later, right? So you guys are telling me how great you are and you're developing all these great students and all this stuff. But if you were the Detroit public school system, they're beating your ass. So the absolute worst public school system in the North America is having a graduation rate that's 3 times higher than the graduation at that rate you're developing. And I got to tell you, any public school system, any private school system in the world, if they tried to tell me how great their quality was because they produced one Nobel laureate, but 50% ended up not graduating at all and ended up not getting their degree, would you say that they're great or would you say they suck?
Suck.
Right. See, so you've got to talk to them in that kind of language. And the only way you get to them emotionally, to me, is you've got to piss them off to begin with, get underneath it, have them understand what the outcome that you're trying to get to, and then frame it for them on how they need to solve that.
Oh, I'm too tender for that. I'll do my best.
Well, yeah, but I mean, you get the idea, right? So
yes, I do, and I like what you're saying, and you've told me that once before, and you're probably going to have to tell me what Master Moody 24 more times, right?
27.
Well, he already told me twice, so 23, 25.
Yeah, but it really is true that most teachers take their star student and point to that as an example of their competency. But the way to figure out their competency is what's the outcome of the medium student, right? The average student. And the outcome for the average student doesn't matter whether it's you or it's a martial arts school or whatever, is the average student drops out when they never got to be good, and they'll never be any better because they stopped.
And they have it in their mind that they couldn't have been good for whatever reason. Yeah. I totally agree. I always say that. I'm like when I meet children that have quit, like they're 14 or 15 and they want to do a recreational class or whatever. And they said, oh, I did it when I was 6, but I wasn't very good. I'm like, no, you never got a chance to be good. You either a teacher did not inspire you or whatever, but you yourself could have been just fine.
Exactly.
I say
And
that to
you know,
kids all the time. I just need to say it to the teachers now. That's a good point.
the example I would use for our staff is, when's the last time you were standing in line at the grocery store, or you're standing in line at the Starbucks, and you had your, staff shirt on, or you had your staff jacket on? What always happens? Well, what do you mean? Well, what always happens? Yeah, think about it for a while. Well, somebody always comes up and says, oh, you do karate? I used to do karate. Oh, okay. And I'll tell you the way the conversation usually goes. I say, oh, okay. What did you train in? When did you train? What level did you get to? And the conversation is 99% is, oh, I got to gold belt and I dropped out. I got to green belt and dropped out. Right. And for every one of your students who's having that conversation of I got to green belt and dropped out, guess what? They may have been the world's best green belt, but the fact that they were the world's best green belt doesn't mean they're a good martial artist now, because they never got beyond green belt, right?
Yeah, and what 90% of the kids that we teach, we're not teaching them to be the #1 champion in the world. We're teaching them to be a active practitioner of the sport, the activity, the art, whatever you want to call it, throughout their lives, because that's the point, is
Right.
to give them an outlet for their physical and mental and health well-being, right?
Right. But you're developing focus and discipline and confidence and physical acuity. And that's a lifetime activity. But what happens is if they do it for 4, 5, 6 years, my argument is they've developed lifetime habits. Even if they're not still training, they may lose the physical acuity, but the mental skills they've developed are going to stay with them.
Agreed. They're going to
But
be people for a lot longer than they're going to be dancers or
Yeah.
martial artists.
Yeah, but that's not true if they train for 3 or 4 months.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay, so it is a mindset thing, and I need to approach it a little bit different than not focusing necessarily on the actual tasks as much as them understanding the point of the tasks.
Right, exactly. And I always start with mission and goals, right? And get them really clear on the mission, get them really clear on the goals, right? And then as a teacher, you have to get them to do internal locus of control, which means they take 100% responsibility for the student outcome, which frankly may or may not be fair, but it doesn't matter. They can put off the responsibility on the student, or they can take 100% responsibility.
Right,
And
because
so
that's
you've
what we're
got to-
trying to do, is we're trying to get everybody to take 100% responsibility for themselves.
Exactly. But
Children,
what the bad
parents,
teachers do, they just weren't excited enough. They just weren't disciplined enough.
Right.
That parent didn't cooperate. They're always pointing the finger, right?
Yeah.
And the real problem is them.
Right. Yeah, no, I get it. No, that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, still need to learn how to be a better leader, but yeah, I'm picking up what you're putting down, and I appreciate it.
And the one thing I would add from what Master Smith said, my conversation with all the staff is, your role here is any and everything, this is for full-timers, any and everything that needs to be done for this school to be successful, for us to accomplish our mission and to accomplish our goals. So if that's, clean the bathrooms, if that's go and shovel the sidewalks, if that's clean the handprints off the mirrors, or if that's call somebody who's been inactive, your role is to do any and everything. There's no such thing as saying that's not my job. Now we're going to have some specialization, right? We're going to have somebody who predominantly does enrollments, but you have to know how to do that too. We're going to have somebody who predominantly does the administrative follow-up, but you have to do that too. And if that person gets hit by a bus on the way into the work today, or if they're just out sick or whatever, you have to be able to step up to the plate and do that role.
Right.
Right. And that's why you then cross-train everybody as well.
Right. No, you're right. You're absolutely right. And I think one of the hardest is, carving out that time that everyone's in the right. I mean, like, it's a weekly thing, I guess, right? Like, you just have to consistently do it regularly and get them.
Yeah. Well,
this is so effective is because, I know it in my head, but unless I hear it 16 times and Master Moody says it and Master Smith says it and you say it 15 different ways.
Yeah. Start with mission and goals and then break it down into tasks that helps to accomplish the goals and the mission, right? And make sure that's always congruent with the best interest for the staff members and the best interest for the students. And then you've got to show them how hitting the mission and the goal of the business ties into hitting their personal mission and goals. And frankly, sometimes it's dangerous because it is a point at which you flush out staff, is they come to find out that what they want to accomplish and what you want to accomplish are different. And doesn't really matter what they want to accomplish unless it fits with what you need them to accomplish.
Right. And, like regardless of how many tools and tricks and shortcuts you give them, you still have to walk it out with them 27 times.
Sure, exactly. Well, and you have to train them thoroughly. Then you have to retrain them every 90 days. So, again, I'm going to figure out whose quote this was, but the quote is, all systems left on their own tend towards entropy. In other words, you train them once and you just let them go with it. It starts to disintegrate right away.
Asimov.
Is it?
It is.
There you go. Fantastic. That's fascinating. I've always been a huge Arthur Clarke and Asimov fan. But
yeah, I think that's part of the robotics, laws of robotics.
Oh, there you go. We used to attribute it to Hawkins and then found out it wasn't Hawkings. So
I think it comes from Asimov.
Perfect. Well, I read everything he wrote back in when I was in my 20s and teens. So
that's why you have
I'm
that
sure it was
earworm.
buried in the episode. Is that it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
There you go. Never was that much of a
for a
Dune
living.
fan.
That would be so much more fun.
It would be. Okay. On that note, anybody have anything else? Master Moody, Master Smith, anything to add before we call it a day? 10 minutes over schedule. I'll take the full blame on it for a change, Master Smith.
No, sir.
Master Smith, you're muted.
Thank you so much.
Oh, you're very welcome.
Good question.
I just wanted to remind everybody, Bob posted some good things for everybody. And some of them, he did it during the meeting. So make sure you look at it. There was some bully prevention by Master Moody in there, some after school stuff, rising to the occasion stuff, retention ID card stripe stuff, annual marketing plan, marketing checklist. Now, some of that marketing plan and marketing checklist, it ties in with when we were talking about going back through the grassroots marketing, and make sure that you write a list. On the left side, you write down things that you know how to do, that you want to do. And on the right side, put the things that you don't know how to do but want to do. And just remember, during the virus, a lot of the live marketing stuff doesn't work, but there's a lot of other things in there. You've got to get your Parthenon built up. Don't rely on one or two marketing things. If we don't add new students, step one, stop the bleeding with the retention. That's why he put that video in there. He put the school program in there to help because of the talk we had at the beginning. So utilize that Facebook. I still talk to a few members who say, well, I don't like to use Facebook, and I don't like, well, if you're missing our Facebook post on a daily basis, at least going in there and seeing what people are asking, because there's tremendous material in there. A lot of times, 80% of it, you didn't even know to ask the question. So, and not only do they answer the question, there's a good discussion usually about it from several members to give you a lot more insight into it. And a lot of times there's videos or paperwork attached to it.
I think that's a good point. A lot of times you don't know to ask the question. So to bump in there and see what was asked, you'll get some really good value out of that.
And the last thing that I wanted to remind everybody is about the paid in full stuff that I put in. There's a letter in there for you to use. You can tweak it a little bit if you want, but It tells you pretty much 99% of the stuff what to do. After you look at it, if you have any questions, post it in the Facebook page on that same post, so that way we can address those if you have it. But already the people that have been doing it, Delfino is on the call. He's in first place for our little June. We did, because we started it the last week of June, so we made just a June contest to see if we could get to 20,000 or who could get to 20. Delfino's already up to 10.6 extra income from it this month. Scott Sullivan was second with 7,000 something. So, and they just started this on Monday or on Saturday. So make sure that you get something going on this, because I don't think there's anybody on the call who couldn't use an extra $10,000 or $20,000 this month. Now we're also going to do an August one, and that'll carry through everything you did the last week of July all the way to the end of August. And Master Oliver had a good explanation of why you need to do this and how you need to calculate what that number is. And Master Oliver, if you could take just 2 minutes and explain that, I think that would help them.
You're talking about the dropout rate?
No, I'm talking about how you came up with the formula on how much you needed to make in your paid in full this month and why.
Oh, but my suggestion is you just look at March, April, May, and if you're down over last year, you figure out how much you're down, and you decide in August to get back to even, right? And then August, September, we can do a focused renewal blitz and get back to what get back on task on what our goals were for the year, right? So again, Master Smith, if somebody was down 20% in gross, let's say in April, and down 20% in May, and let's say that if you were doing 50, let's say that's 25,000 year to date where you're down over last year. Just go do 25,000 in paid in fulls in August, and now you're back to even. And then what we want is we want to pull the trigger with 100 new students and a solid renewal blitz to be way ahead of last year.
And if you just read that information that I posted, and I'm not advising or telling everybody and not recommending that you send this to everybody. Number one, it should be for leadership or black belt programs of people who have time on their program, not a basic program. So stay away from your basic program. We want to focus on renewing them, not just getting them to pay their program off. We want to renew them later. And then when you're looking at your leadership people, if you just pick your top 20 who you think are your best prospects, don't waste this talking to everybody. Find the ones you think have been good students, they're engaged, they've been coming to class virtually or live or outdoors. Parents are saying good things about the program. And if they're in that good state of mind like that, when you approach them, they're going to be so grateful and thankful that you thought about them, because this is a special, and we're going to send it, text it, email it, direct mail it to them. And then we'll follow up when we see them in the school or outdoors, or we'll call them in a few days to make sure they got it. And then if they say, oh no, I don't, what are you talking about? Then you can resend it or talk to them about it then. But the post does refer that they need to call you. You didn't tell them what the amounts were to pay it off. You're only telling them what the different options on the savings and how much they're going to save. And that has to be calculated to their exact savings on those. Don't just make up numbers there. You got to put what the savings on each one of those. So that way they'll say, can you tell me how I can save that $1,000 or that $2,000 or $500 or whatever it is.
Master Smith, I would.
That's it. I'm done.
Hey, I would suggest starting with that next Thursday.
We'll do a follow-up. Yeah, we'll hit it every Thursday because we want to get an update on how everybody's doing. And do some posts. Say something on those posts about how you're doing, because we want to kind of motivate off of each other. And thanks, Delfino, for taking the lead on this for everybody. And I know Delfino is happy because, I don't care if he didn't do another penny, that's $10,600 that he had this month that he wouldn't have had. but I think he's going to hit even more this week, and then next week he's going to take it another step for August. Anything that you want to, since you're in the lead and you're our leader right now, Delfino, any words of advice you want to give everybody about it?
Don't be shy about it. Just ask. We did send out those letters, and as parents were coming in, our program director was asking if they got the letter. A couple of them said yes. We sat down, went over the numbers, and that's how we got a couple of paid in fulls. And 2 of them are supposed to let us know today, and we're pretty confident they're going to do it.
Awesome. That should put you close to 20. Awesome.
And
Awesome.
I would your bike, Master Smith. Isn't that the price?
Good job. Guys, now remember, print up some extra sheets of that letter you're sending them, and without anybody's name on it, but just an extra one, because I guarantee you, every time I've done that, 50% of them are going to say, when you talk to them in person, they're going to go, no, I didn't see that. When did you send it? Well, I'll say, well, here's what I sent. Now I hand them the letter. And then I kind of give them a rundown on it.
I mean, let me suggest we start next meeting with this.
Okay, I just want to give them a jump start for the week, so that way they have a little extra for next week. Okay, good job, guys. I'm
Okay,
done.
if I can keep
Thanks
Master
for
Moody,
my
Master
7
Smith.
minutes. Thanks for my 7 minutes there, Master Oliver.
Well, we could, I just said, let's
We can
start next
start
week.
my 7 minutes next week.
We'll start next week with that. So let me keep you and Bob, if you don't mind, and Master Moody, if he's still there.
I'm here.
Thanks,
there you
Aaron, for being on today. Glad to see you.
Who?
Aaron,
Oh, yeah.
our brand new member.
There you go, Mr. Aaron. He's gone. Bye, Carol. Good seeing you. Bye, Samuel.
Oh, I'm not host, Master Oliver, so I can't boot.
Bye, Mark.
I
Good seeing you.
it is interesting that I'm still host after being gone for 2
didn't-
years.
Well, no,
My video was off. I thought you guys.
it was when it booted you off,
Yeah.
or when you lost power, it transitioned host back to me. But
Oh,
then
okay.
when you logged back on, it went ahead and gave you
That's
host.
amazing how it did
The
that.
host.
Well, that's pretty sophisticated then.
Awesome.
I didn't know it did that, so that's good to know.
That's probably a new iteration, because I imagine that happens more often now.
Bye, Dave.
Yeah, that way you don't lose everybody, or the whole
Yeah.
meeting doesn't shut down.
Yeah, because usually that's what happens. I was afraid. And
Yeah,
it was the
I
strangest.
thought that was going to happen. If you logged off, I thought the whole meeting ends and everybody has to log back on.
Well, we've had that happen before, right?
Yeah.
Well, if you have a co-host, I don't think it does. Was Master Moody your co-host, or?
No, you were the co-host, believe it or
Oh,
not.
no wonder I saved the day.
For time,
When he
what
came
we're
back on, I passed it back to him.
for time, what were we going to talk about? I've got a 1 o'clock here, so go ahead.
Oh, okay, but nothing pressing. Ernie Reyes's group was.
No,
they were-
sir. I was mistaken. That was additional staff from Paul Miller's group.
Yeah.
And I saw the Donna.
Oh, wait a second.